Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, Designing Digital Credentials. My name is Cody and I'm with Accredible's marketing team. If you're not familiar with Accredible, we are the world's leading digital certificate and digital badging software. Over 1,000 companies trust us to issue their digital badges and certificates, and we issue over 1 million credentials each month. So today, I'm going to give you a quick summary of who we are, and then dive into designing digital credentials that are going to showcase your learners' achievements while staying true to your brand, and how your credentials can even promote course and program completion. Let's get started. Design is our focus today, but it's good to know that here at Accredible, we provide support and guidance for any aspects of your credentialing initiative, from planning to deployment and post-launch. And we are the only credentialing platform with full white labeling functionality, the only platform with streamlined recipient sharing experience, and we have the distinction of being the highest rated digital credentialing software on independent review sites like G2, Capterra, and TrustRadius. And we're proud to be IMS certified and SOC 2 certified and Section 501c accessibility compliant and others. But I think while keeping ahead of the curve when it comes to security and technology is important to us, nothing is more rewarding than knowing that your software and services genuinely make people happy, that they really make a difference. So our reviews, our average rating on G2 are the biggest source of pride for me, because those are real, unalterable insights from Accredible users. All right, moving forward. We issue over 1 million credentials each month, so the top figure is consistently going out of date. But our team has implemented digital credentials for over 1,000 organizations globally. You can see a small sample of our customers here. And chances are you're going to interact with an Accredible customer today, whether you are using a computer with an Intel processor, maybe shopping for home supplies at Lowe's, flipping a Schneider electric light switch, or sending a message over Slack. You're using software that Accredible issues credentials for. Everything that we do at Accredible is about furthering credential technology and ensuring success for our customers. But that's enough about us. Let's talk about designing digital credentials. We're going to start off with what kinds of credentials there are, and Accredible is credential agnostic. That means we allow you to decide if you're going to issue certificates or badges or both. And we usually find when somebody isn't using both badge and certificate to reward achievement, the separation exists where certificates are often used when someone is hitting a milestone or a specific type of recognition needs to be offered, and badges are used for pathways and micro-credentialing. And so the types of things credentials recognize then typically fall as skills, knowledge, participation, identity, certification, and social and life skills recognition. More important than that, to this discussion at least, is understanding the type of credential you want to issue based on the outcomes and objectives of that credential. Let's jump into this list. Standalone credentials are ones that don't specifically connect to any other credentials through increasing levels or relevance. So this could be a completely standalone course or exam, or it might be a form of recognition, such as a certificate for attending a conference or a membership card. And then we have stepping stones. These are sequential prescriptive paths of learning that candidates follow step by step as determined by the issuer. And while these are similar to the last bullet point, they are often much more rigid in the guidelines on how they should be completed. And they're often badge-only paths as well. Then we have descriptive, or also called constellations. These are non-linear descriptive pathways that puts control in the hands of the recipient and enables them to build a custom portfolio of ability. So think of a constellation like a digital representation of that individual's skills and abilities. And constellations then are often used when an issuer is responsible for many different types and areas of learning, where the courses they offer could include Microsoft training and new manager training, or how to use jQuery and certified financial planner courses. Skillsoft is a wonderful example here, where there are multiple pathways someone could choose for themselves. And critically, the overall style and feel of the credentials is consistent no matter what the pathway or what type of learning someone's completing. So if I'm looking at a credential for conflict resolution training or one for QuickBooks proficiency, I know both came from Skillsoft because I have that red circle with the Skillsoft logo at the top and the pink section with the details. And that pink section is the only thing that's changing. It's just the course name and course attributes. And then the final type of credential that we have here are prescriptive, or also known as collections. And these are credentials that follow a linear sequential pathway of achievement. And that pathway is set by the issuer. This is honestly my favorite. I've used an example here from McGraw-Hill SimNet to the right. So McGraw-Hill does Microsoft applications training, and their training takes the form of a sequential pathway, a collection, going from level 1, their white belt, to level 4, their black belt. And they convey that information with a guide right beneath their logo here. And then they also offer the information in plain text and with splashes of color for each level, so that the purple belt badge says purple belt and has the information highlighted in purple. Let's focus in on their designs and also talking about using credentials to motivate learners. So every pathway and course has steps. And when we recognize those steps, we set ourselves up to push recipients through that entire course or pathway. So when trying to make credentials that all come from the same pathway, the colors, shapes, and designs are typically consistent across the individual credentials, with the progress level represented inside of the design itself. And we've seen that done through text with icons like stars and dots, maybe in color. The important piece is to maintain branding while offering a clear depiction of both the learner's achievement and their place in the pathway. You and anyone else looking at the credential should be able to almost instantly recognize and understand the level of completion that the earner has achieved based on the credential design. And this is one of the reasons why I like McGraw-Hill's designs here so much. They go beyond just telling us someone's at level 1. We know they're at level 1 of 4. That small change in design is a monumental incentive for the learner to get themselves to the top level, because it makes the earner award level clear to anyone looking at the credential. It makes their progress very, very clear. So if that planned pathway is intended to culminate in a final credential, we can also ensure that the highest value credential there is going to stand out in the collection against the other individual pieces. That then represents the increased importance of the final credential and motivates the recipients to work towards that achievement. So that can be done both through the use of design elements inside that single type of credential, like the badge we have in the lower right here, or you can motivate completion by changing the type of credential that you're offering as part of that structure. So if you have a 5-level course and levels 1 through 4 give you badges, but level 5 completion gets you a full page certificate and a badge, you have incentive as a learner to get to level 5 and attain that reward that's going to help you stand out. All right. So promoting pathway completion is all about offering progress information directly on your designs and making those same designs appealing to your learners, either through the unique higher level designs or through the strategic use of certificates and badges. Now we'll jump into the actual process that you want to go through when you're designing certificates or badges. The first thing that you want to do is determining information that you will include. You need to understand what's going to be available on the digital credential page and then figure out what information needs to go on the actual credential. So by default, our credentials are hosted on a dedicated web page, and that includes space for additional information like course or association details, evidence of knowledge application, transcripts, and exam scores. And that means you don't need to clutter the certificate with supporting information, while also assuring that the information is going to be available to inform third parties that need to see it. It's also good to note here that our digital badges comply with the Open Badge standard and are automatically encoded with any necessary credential information like the badge URL, the issue date, the recipient information, so that you don't need to try to include that on the badge design either. The most common information we see included on a digital certificate is the issuer's branding and logo, the name of the certificate, the recipient name, the date of issuance, and a signature from either an stakeholder or an instructor. And then some issuers will also include certificate ID numbers, maybe an expiration date or number of hours spent. Sometimes if you're doing any sort of continuing or professional education, you'll also have a value of educational units and potentially the job role of the individual involved. Badges, on the other hand, most often include the issuer's brand or logo, the badge or award name, and the level of the badge if it's a progressive reward. Much simpler process. We do also sometimes see recipient names or IDs and issue dates, but those are much less common. So most issuers also take advantage of attributes in a credible to show off this information. Attributes are dynamic text pulled from the fields you define, and they're available on both certificates and badges. And attributes are dropped into the design. They automatically return the required information in the final design whenever you generate a certificate. So it's pulling directly from your database of info. And this is really useful when you want to create a single design and use it across a number of courses where only the course name needs to change or something along those lines. And we'll get into a little bit more detail on that later. For now, we'll move on from our data collection ideas to the next step, which is layouts and backgrounds. So we have a design tool. It's easy to use. It's a drag and drop interface, and it includes templates for you to get started and image upload features for adding your logo and everything else. If you're working with a certificate, the first step that you take when you get to the designer is figuring out whether you want, let's say, US letter or A4 for your paper size, and whether you want landscape or portrait for the orientation. Badges don't require you to select a size here. They're all standard. So you've selected your size or are starting fresh with badges. The next step is selecting your background. So our template options are widely available. There's a bunch. You will be able to find something that will probably work for you if you're just getting started. And that applies to both the certificate and badge backgrounds. So you can select one of those pre-made options for yourself, or you can upload your own badge or certificate background to start working with. And we have recommended sizes for those images. So keep in mind that you should avoid using images that are not part of the recommended sizing. Doing so is probably going to result in something that has to be scaled up or scaled down to fit the certificate. And that could be something that results in pixelation or distortion of the image. So especially if you're working with a graphic designer, make sure they understand what the sizing is going to be for those uploads as you get those files so that everything looks as good as you've made it. If you go with templates though, keep in mind the templates themselves are customizable. So looking at the badge examples on this slide, we could change the far left badge to be yellow in the center and red on the top and bottom to match our brand colors. So let's say we've done that. We have our designs, we've either uploaded or customized a template to fit our needs. It's time to actually start branding this stuff. And as the issuer of the credential, your brand should be identifiable at a glance. Logos and branding should always be clear and legible. It shouldn't be shrunk into a corner. It shouldn't be distorted. And you also want to make sure that you have contrast between your logo and the background so your branding doesn't get lost in the design. Whether you have just an icon, maybe an icon and text logo, or just text for your logo, you need to ensure the placement on your credentials comes before you add any other information, any other formatting. So your logo always comes first and always gets priority when you're designing the credential. All right, now let's say we're branded. It's time to include the information that we decided on in our pre-design step. But we don't just want to type everything out. We want to use attributes whenever possible. So the name of the recipient, the course they took, the earn date, the expiration date, all of those attributes exist inside of the credential database, and they can be pulled out dynamically when the credential actually gets created for an individual user. This part of the design process is the one that enables you to design your own reusable credentials or design your own templates to be used in multiple courses. So instead of making a new design for each course I offer, I can set the course name and other course details as attributes and have those automatically pulled into the certificate so that whenever a recipient earns my public speaking or my Six Sigma training certification, the underlying template is going to be the same. The management and overhead time that you can save here is massive, and it can help you to scale more easily. So for companies like Skillsoft that we had the example earlier, they issue millions of credentials. Effective attribute use is an essential part of design. They would come to a screeching halt if they had to make new designs every time a new course got spun up. So the next pieces that we include are generally signatures and QR codes on certificates. The signature could be a manually uploaded image, but we can again use dynamic insertion here so that the signature you have in any given credential is going to populate based on the course the recipient took. Signatures are important to certificates because they lend higher authority to the certificate itself. Yes, the certificate carries weight because of your brand, but with a signature, it also carries the weight of the instructor, the stakeholder sign off. So we have that. And then the final piece is QR codes. So QR codes are optional, but I recommend them as part of certificate design. Let's say you have a CPA course and the recipient wants to print out their certificate or they want to download the credentials as PDF. A QR code is going to provide an easy to scan link, and that link will take someone directly to the live credential page to verify the authenticity of that credential. And when you go to insert a QR code, we even have it set up so that you can use two brand colors instead of just a white and black QR code. And there's a contrast checker to ensure that that code is going to scan for you. The other piece to mention here is that when you are in the designer, you don't need to be a design guru or know how to use Photoshop in order to make a good looking design. As you can see from the left-hand side here and a little bit on the right-hand side, we have markers similar to, let's say, if you were creating a presentation in PowerPoint that will show you where elements should be and will sort of lock you into place as you get close to something so that you don't need to be a designer to design. We've gotten our branding, we've gotten our logo on there, all the attributes are there. Your final piece is testing. I cannot say this enough. Don't forget to test. I'm going to revisit McGraw-Hill's designs here because there's a bit of a story that I like sharing. They had spent some time brainstorming ideas, hours going through options, looking at everything themselves, and they came up with karate belt recognition, right? Starting with a white belt, ending with a black belt. It made a lot of sense, right? It was a neat way of looking at things. It was relevant to the team thinking up the designs. So they had this credential that was going to be their logo, the belt name and color, and the logo of the software someone was learning. But here's the problem. When McGraw-Hill tested the designs internally by showing them to other teams and stakeholders, they quickly realized not everyone knows karate belt progression. Was yellow better than purple? Was black better than white? It was difficult to tell at a glance what the value of the credential was. So they went back and they added the L1, L2, L3, L4 slider that we see in this final design. And you've already heard me praise this when I was talking about motivating course completion before. So you probably already know, I'm going to say not only did the redesign after the testing help McGraw-Hill to create something that was instantly recognizable, they also managed to make it so that anyone can instantly identify how far a learner has progressed towards completion. So testing is going to ensure that you and everyone else understands what your credentials are trying to convey and ensures that they are doing it in a way that works for all learners and platforms. So test your designs, test your attributes, test your custom text and signatures and QR codes, especially if you're doing something really customized and unique like the Black Hat credential here. Take this step and involve multiple people in your organization so that when you launch your program or issue a credential, you are representing your brand and your rewards in the best way possible. All right, tools and resources. We offer a number of things to help you get started. Of course, our software has the built-in badge and built-in certificate designer that offers a ton of templates and objects to make it easy to design. Even for somebody not graphically inclined like myself, I can go in there and make something that looks good, even without knowing how to use Photoshop or being a true designer. And we also have a number of help articles on credential design. That's on help.credible.com. I think the biggest resource for you, though, especially if you're watching this webinar, is going to be one of our definitive design guides. They go into the really granular details about badge design, and they give you and your team planning and creation checklists that should give you a smooth path to design, approval, and first credential issue. I highly recommend checking these out if you haven't already. And if you are interested in one of these guides, please let me know. and I will get a copy out to you. I'll go to questions now. All right. So the first question that I see here is, can I test out the badge designer? The answer is yes. So all you have to do is sign up for an Incredible account. Go to incredible.com. There's a sign up button that's going to be right on the main page there. And when you create an account, it's free. You don't have to spend anything to do that. And as part of that free account, you can go in and use all of the elements of the badge designer or the certificate designer. So you can test out what you want your credentials to look like. And you can even go so far as to test how those are going to look when a recipient receives them. So by default, you get 20 credits to issue your certificates or your badges. And in that way, you can go through the entire design and testing process without needing to pay a cent for any of the software. All right, the next question that I have here is, out of the steps we went through on design, what is the most important and why? And that is a tough question to answer. For me, in the way that I think of it, testing is always the most important, because without that, you can fall into traps of thinking that something is great and being inside an echo chamber and not seeing what that's going to look like to a different audience. But if we're talking about the actual through process of design, I think the most important thing to start off with is understanding what information you want to convey. And that's important because certain stakeholders inside of any organization are going to want different information represented on a credential. This is a branded piece that represents your brand, your authority as the issuer. And if it doesn't carry the weight of your brand like you want it to, it's not going to feel like a success. So if you have a line in there about somebody's earn date that takes away from an otherwise, very rigid and structured credential that just has a couple of elements, it's going to feel off. So understanding first what information you want to put on the credential is key in making sure that the rest of those pieces roll smoothly through the process. And I'll also say defining that information is also really key when you're going through the design process, because if you do that right, figuring out what attributes should be on a credential can be part of that information step, right? If you know that you want to have the internal course number represented, you can create an attribute for that. And as part of your design process, make sure that that attribute exists and can be used wherever it needs to be. Great question. All right, the next one that I have here is on fonts. What fonts do you have available? I can't go through the entire list right now. I don't think we would like to have me sitting here reading off the whole list, but we have a very long list. We do allow you to get some customization in for the fonts as well. So something that we didn't go into as much is that in the designer, of course, there is a full sort of text editor. So all of those text boxes that we saw, or all of the attributes that are going to pull in that dynamic information, you can change the font, change the size, weight, etc. Those are all customizable and up to you. All right. Do you provide training on how to use the system? So we have a number of self-help articles, but additionally, if you are inside of a purchase process with Incredible, we'll go through those pieces with you. And we do have some YouTube style videos that will take you through what the designer is, where the resources in the designer are. So if you're okay with it, Daniel, I will have somebody reach out to you after this webinar is over to make sure that you have links to those so that you can get a little self-help started on figuring out how to use the system and take advantage of it. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. And remember, if you want to, you can get in touch with our experts at any time from our website, incredible.com. You can also sign up for a free trial account at any time. And that's going to give you access, of course, to that badge and certificate designer. And testing out the designer, if you're not a graphic designer, is fantastic. No Photoshop experience is required to make a credential. I can do it, which means you can do it. So thank you everyone again for joining me, and have a fantastic day.